Meeple Nation Podcast, episode 458. Catch these 5 racing games. And they're off.
Welcome, citizens of Meeple Nation. For the next 30 minutes, sit back and enjoy.
Meeple Nation is brought to you by GameToppersLLC.com. If you ever have the urge to increase the awesomeness of your game table area, visit their website. It is what they do best.
No, that's absolutely true, Logan. And maybe with Christmas having come and gone, you didn't get that special something you were hoping for. Head on over to Game Toppers LLC and treat yourself to an incredible table topper, mat, or other accessory that will absolutely make game night epic and amazing.
It's a great place to spend those gift cards.
Way better than anything you can get on Amazon anyway. Welcome to Meeple Nation. We are your hosts. I am Andy Holliday.
I'm Douglas Stewart.
I'm Nathan Howard.
I'm Dave Holliday.
And I am returning host, Logan Howard.
Logan is back.
I know, it feels so good to be here.
We almost forgot the sound of your voice, Logan.
I know. It's
The
like I got my
dulcet
tonsils
tones.
out all over again.
He even shaved for us. He was like, I'm going to be back. I got to look my best.
Since Logan's back, we get to enjoy his company. If you want a little more of Logan or the rest of us, you can jump over to our website and visit the past links to all of our episodes. We also have links to our blogs on our website and bios of each of us and bios of our bloggers as well. Along with that, we have photos of our gaming experiences that we've shared with all of you. If you have any questions or comments on the podcast, or if there's something that you would like to hear about, or if something you'd just like to share with us, please email us at meeplenation@gmail.com. We would absolutely love to hear from you. And finally, if you love what we do, we would greatly appreciate it if you follow the link on our website to our Patreon page. We love our patrons and we thank you so much. For those of you that would be interested in supporting the podcast, we have a link that will take you over to our Patreon page, and we, again, are grateful for any support you can give us.
This week, we have each picked a racing game to talk about. I'm going to go ahead and get us started. The game that I wanted to talk about this week was The Quest for El Dorado. When we first started talking about racing games, Nathan, you put the qualifier on this discussion as being, we're really looking at games that have a finish line. It's a race, and then you're going to cross a finish line. We're not necessarily racing for a certain number of points or to meet some other objectives. Once that racing line is finished, that triggers the end of the game. One of my favorite games that meets that criteria is The Quest for El Dorado. I'm a pretty big fan of deck building games in general, and I think this is a nice little deck building game. This is a game for 2 to 4 players by Reiner Knizia. The premise of this is actually pretty simple. You have a bunch of modular tiles that you're going to lay out on the table. They can be placed out in a number of different formations. Reference the rule book, you can put some in formations that will make the race a little easier and some that'll make it a little bit harder. What I love about that is it really increases the replayability of this game because it's going to be a different layout and a different difficulty every time you play it. You can really kind of customize the map that you play on. Every player is going to start with a standard hand of opening cards, and then the game just plays like most deck builders do. On your turn, you're going to play out the cards in your hand. You're going to choose how to take the actions you want. Everything goes into discard pile. Then you're going to replenish at the end of your turn. Then when you go to draw a new hand, if you run out of cards, you just shuffle up your discard pile and draw from there. Pretty standard deck building mechanisms at play here. The cards basically come in 4 different flavors. You have coins, you have machetes, and you have canoes. The 4th type of card, they're purple colored action cards. They're all a little different. The coins you can play on your turn to either acquire new cards from the market, or you can pay to sort of traverse through the map through the villages. The machetes you can use to traverse the jungle, and the canoes you can pay to traverse the water tiles on the map. Pretty straightforward. What I really like about the basic setup of the game is it forces you to make some interesting decisions, especially with those money cards, because you are either going to use them to do something on the map or you have to use them to acquire new cards from the market. The other thing that this game does in terms of deck building that I find really unique and I think is totally awesome is it has a standard row of market cards that it comes with, but then there are about a dozen other stacks of cards, and each stack is the same, and these are cards that can get added to the market. But at first, they're locked. You don't have access to them. What you're going to do, as soon as one of the market stalls runs out, the player gets to choose which of those other locked market cards goes into its place. Timing it right, you can pick up a card you need to develop your strategy. But at the same time, you're also allowing other people. You've now introduced those cards into the market, the purchasable market, and now you're allowing other people to buy those cards as well. I think there's some really interesting decision-making space there with how the deck building for this game works. Basically, you're going to traverse through the jungles, playing your cards out, and the first one to get to the Golden City wins. I really like this one. I have had a good time playing this one. I think this is a good gateway game. It's an easy one for newer players. I think the theme is great, plays pretty smooth. The box says it's about a 60-minute game, and that seems to be about right.
Yeah, I think that's a spot on time. And it goes from that 2 to 4 players, and it really transitions from that 2 to 4 player game quite well. In a 2-player game, each player is going to play with 2 explorers, and you're going to rotate which explorer you're moving along the board. In a 3 or 4 player, each player is going to play with 1 explorer. Each platter has the individual hexes on it, several platters that you're going to play on. And as you transverse across that platter and you reach the transition point from platter A to platter B, whoever crosses that is going to get a reward for being the first player to cross to the new platter. And the terrain gets different. Sometimes you're going through deep jungle, so it requires more work with your machete to advance a spot. The natives require more taxing to go through their spot, so you're playing more coins to pass through that. Or the water is rough, and so it requires more ore to cross through that. And then there's some locations that have some unpassable terrain, like mountains, and then caves as well that are impassable terrain. Certain purple cards will allow you to transverse through some of those. But other than that, you're going to have to go around. If you get stuck with a hand that has not the correct terrain that you need, you're either going the long way around, or you're going to have to get creative with what you can buy to hopefully plan for what you're going to be able to do in future turns. I think the game is great. I very much enjoy this game. Like you said, it's a great gateway game. I totally agree. It's very easy to teach. The hand management and the deck building is streamlined, very easy to understand and to teach new players. It's a game I would teach my wife. And I'm actually surprised I haven't taught my wife this game, because this is one that I think she would very much enjoy and something that we could get to the table on a regular basis. So maybe I'll put it on my 10 for 10 this year. We'll see.
The first time I played this was with my wife, so we both played it for the first time together, and we both loved it. Plays very snappy, especially at 2 players. I actually think it does shine as a 2-player game because you each get 2 people to traverse through the jungle, and because the turns go so fast, snapping right back and forth, one person to the next. I love how the game sort of forces you to take a look at where you're going to cross that finish line and what terrain you're going to have to traverse to get there. And then you have to deck build and think about your priorities in order to be efficient through that last push. You almost want to start deck building for the end game right at the beginning.
You always have to be looking at a turn ahead. You can't concentrate on, or these 2 spaces this time. You have to plan for that. Well, I'm going to need ores coming up. If I don't have ores, I got to go through this really dense jungle, and that's going to slow me down. Or if I don't have enough coins to go through the village, I'm going to have to make another path. I totally agree. That management of not just looking at your current turn, but looking at future turns, and absolutely looking at what you're going to need at that end to cross that threshold of El Dorado. I love how you have to plan for that, like you said, essentially at the get-go of the game.
This is one I have not played. Racing games typically aren't my favorite games, but the ones that I really do like are the ones where it's not just you're racing around a track, for example. There's all sorts of shenanigans going on or obstacles you have to overcome. Oh, the way you guys have described this, where there are a lot of obstacles and there's a lot of planning involved with a deck builder, sounds awesome. I think it sounds like a great game.
I think your daughters, Amara and Sierra, would love this game.
Oh, I think you're right.
Yeah, I absolutely think that's true.
I think the only time I've played this game was with Nathan and Brent. I thoroughly enjoyed the game. I would highly suggest it.
And it has some modules you can add in to kind of make it a little more difficult. Nathan, you kind of mentioned those caves. You actually set these tiles out on the cave, so if your person lands adjacent to one of those, you gain a little bonus tile that you can use to sort of deck build and do things with. There's also a Heroes and Hexes expansion, as well as a full standalone expansion, so you can play it by itself or you can implement it with the base game. It's the Quest for El Dorado, the Golden Temples expansion. There's also some depth of components and different play modes and content for the game that give you a little bit more if you're trying to push it past that gateway type experience, push it into a little bit more of a mid-weight style of game. That is the Quest for El Dorado. I think it's a fantastic deck builder, a fantastic racing game, and I'm actually excited to get it to the table again. I haven't played this one for a little while, and I want to get it to table more. This is a good one.
With that comment, maybe I'll for sure put it on my 10 because it sounds like I got some people that are willing to play it. So I don't have to drag it out till the end of the year and force everybody to spend their holiday break playing games with me like I did this last year.
You might want to have it played before you decide that, because one other person really enjoys it, but everybody else, for some reason,
That person can
doesn't.
sit out.
Then it's just going to be two of you guys.
But that's okay. It plays great as a two-player game.
It's really good as a 2.
All right, 2-player game episode.
My racing game is Can't Stop. Old school? Is that the right word for it? Old school game? Came out in 1980, well before my time. It is a fairly simple game, a race game, because it's as soon as one person reaches the goal, which is to go up the individual tracks 3 separate times, they win the game. It has a press your luck function that I have seen so many people get super frustrated and so many people get super excited about. Nathan's wife, Cheryl, she really likes this game.
Yeah, she does. In fact, that's probably the game I played the most last year, and we played it 106 times.
Holy smokes.
Holy smokes. That's awesome.
The gameplay is really simple. On your turn, you get 4 dice, you roll the dice, and take 2 of the numbers, and then you can go up that particular number on the track. It's set up so like 2, you only have to go up 3 times. Same with 12. Goes up to 7, it's the most that you need to go up on that track, and you need to go up 13 times.
7 is definitely the one you have to go up the most because it's the most commonly rolled number.
Exactly. And so where the press of luck comes from, as you're going, you make the choice of stopping. But as your turn starts, you're locked into 3 numbers. If you're the first person, you can roll the dice and then choose the first 2 combinations that come up, and then the next roll, you can add in another combination of dice. And then if you don't roll any of those combinations, you lose all your progress. You have to make the choice as you go up so far on something. That's it, I'm done. I've seen people roll one time and they get a 12 and they already had one on the track. So they're like, that's it, I'm done. I don't want to risk anymore. Sometimes they win, sometimes they lose. It's a great game because it gets more complicated as people finish their tracks. That number combination doesn't count for you anymore. So like say Andy completes the 7 track. If I roll a 7 and all I got are 3 and 4s, I can't get 7s anymore. So what I have to do with 6 or 8s. And that's if somebody else haven't completed those, because those are the next most common combinations as well. It has a lot of that press your luck. It has a lot of that tension at the game. You're looking at everybody else, their progress of like, ooh, I really don't want to risk it, but I can't let Dave win. And so then you're like, I gotta do it. And sometimes it backfires. Sometimes you do it. There's so much going on with the game. It's just so exciting that way.
I like to think there's a lot of strategy in this game, even though you're rolling dice. Because you bring up that point, if I roll a 12, the chances of me rolling another 12 goes down considerably. Whereas if I'm going up the 6, 7, or 8 track, the chances of me rolling those numbers is far greater. If my 3 tracks that I'm going up that round are spread apart and are uncommon numbers, so like if I have a 3 and a 2, then a 7, my desire to push that is reduced. Because yeah, I have that chance to roll that 7, but if I don't roll that 7, my other options is the 2 and the 3, my probability of rolling that goes down considerably. I'm going to use my air quotes there. There is strategy in that dice rolling game. You're trying to factor in the probability of, am I going to be successful with this dice roll? And is it worth pushing it further? Or is it, yeah, I only moved up 1 spot on 3 different tracks, but because these tracks are so far spread apart, my probability is down. So I'm just going to stop. And like you say, it is a lot about the luck.
That's what it really comes down to, because I've seen people, Nathan's air quotes of strategy, where they place their numbers and they're pretty well spread out and they go up like 8 times on that 7 track and then lose all their progress because they don't get any combinations on the next toss.
And I feel like I've had countless experiences where I have rolled 3 rolls. So I roll, put out my first 2, roll, put out my third one, roll, and I bust. So many times going back and forth, my wife and I have both run into that. And there's games, it just feels like D6 ate me. Because I can watch my wife just go up every track and I get stopped. And then the next game, the tables turn. She can't get on the board. The game ends when one person has completed 3 tracks. And one of my highlights about this game is I've actually won the game 5-0. I've been able to complete 3 tracks on that last turn because I had stuff that was so close to the end. Okay, we got to push to get it. Magic happens on my dice, and I'm able to advance all 3 of mine to finish locations. And I had the game at 4, but I decided to push to get that 5th one, just so I could say I won the game 5-0. And that was the feather in my cap for Can't Stop.
Here's my issue with this game. I can't stop.
That's my wife's same issue.
No, for real though, I have played this game numerous times. There's actually a really great implementation of this on BGA, and I've played it a number of times, and I always lose because I can't stop rolling the dice. I get caught in that cycle of somebody else being just a little bit ahead of me, probably because they showed a little more restraint and stopped. And so then I'm always feeling like I need to push to catch up, and then I'm always busting. And then you bust, and then you're like, okay, I got to push a little harder. But it feels really good when the luck swings your way. And especially if you're coming from behind, it is a fun game. It really is. I mean, even though the luck does have such a big part in this, it just is fun.
When you get behind, I mean, you are forced to push your luck, right?
Yep.
You are forced. If I have any chance of winning, I have to keep rolling. And you can get those big turns, and you're like, woo, that was great. Or you can get really close, and then all of a sudden, you're blown out of the water again.
Just to be clear, Nathan mentioned Finnish locations. This is not a game that takes place in Finland or anywhere else. He's just talking about completing.
Thanks, Dave. I'm willing to bet there were many people confused on that point. We keep you around for this reason. You've really shown us your true colors here.
When does your nursing school start?
Is this when we need to cue the fish song about Finland? Monty Python.
Can't Stop's a great game.
Highly suggest it. Find it on BGA if you can't find it in person, because it is an older game.
It's an evergreen game. It's available.
The game I chose was Camel Up. Now, I did mention earlier in the podcast that I didn't really care for racing games where you're just running around a track. Well, this is a game where you're just running around the track. But there are shenanigans afoot with this game.
Shenanigans aplenty.
Yes, there are. It makes it so what would normally be just a generic racing game, actually quite fun and unpredictable, which is exactly what you're trying to do in this game, is predict who the winner and who the losers are going to be. And there are 3 heats that you're going to play through. So there are 5 different normal racing camels in the game, all different colors, and they're going to be running around the track. As one of the actions that you can take, you can drop a die out of the pyramid. That color of camel is going to move around the track, unless the gray die is rolled. If the gray die is rolled, there are 2 crazy camels that are running the opposite direction. The way the game works is when a camel lands on a space with another camel, it actually lands on top of that camel. If there's a camel that has a camel on top of it moves, it will take everything that's on top of it with it. That includes the crazy camels that run their opposite directions. Maybe the green camel's in the lead, and all of a sudden it lands on the black crazy camel, and then the gray die gets rolled, and the black crazy camel runs the opposite direction. Everybody bet on that green camel winning, and blue comes ahead, pulls out the win because of those crazy camels throwing a wrench in the race. I have loved playing this game.
Now, just to be clear, this is Camel Up's 2nd edition.
Correct.
Because the 1st edition doesn't have the crazy camels.
Which I think really added to the game. I've never played it without the crazy camels, but from what I would imagine would be an okay racing game, I guess, to a really fun racing game.
Absolutely. And the addition of the 3D pyramid that you're actually dropping the dice out of.
Yes.
Big fun. The 3D board where it has a pop-up oasis with palm trees. The 2nd edition is absolutely the way to go with Camel Up.
Technically, the crazy camels, the ones moving backwards, are a module. You can play the 2nd edition without them if you so choose. Why anyone would do that, I have no idea, because they make that game so much better.
Also, when you include the crazy camels, that also means that one of the dice will not come out of the pyramid.
Correct.
And that could be the gray die that has the black and the white crazy camel on it. Or it could be one of the other 5 colored camels. Just the way that the chaos that the crazy camels introduce into the game, I find very entertaining. Like everybody is saying here, very much enhances the game.
That's what makes it so difficult. One of the actions you can take on your turn is you can take a betting slip. There are betting slips of each of the colored camels. With those betting slips, they are stacked with the higher amount of reward at the top. First people to take those betting slips gain the higher reward if that camel wins. The more slips you take, the less reward you're going to gain. So it's beneficial to gain those slips early in the game or early in the heat, but the chances of that camel winning is not necessarily obvious early in the round of that race. You're really trying to predict that and gain that benefit. But if you guess wrong, you're actually going to have to pay money and lose coins if you took the wrong slip.
And when you talk about winning and losing, you're talking about that particular leg of the race, which is something that this game does so well. You're kind of playing this big racing game as a series of smaller racing games. Each leg, you have to try to predict winners and losers. And the way that those camels stack on each other and can move in different directions leaves everyone at the table kind of scratching their head and trying to figure out the probabilities of, okay, well, depending on the dice that comes out, green or red, they're going to move here. Well, there's only 2 dice left in the pyramid. If it's this one, it could do this. Oh, but what if it's the blue one? He would move the entire stack up 1, 2, or 3. And then the order changes, and everyone's trying to evaluate where those camels are at any given moment while the game's being played.
And what's funny about that is everybody declares, oh, I think blue's going to win. Blue has a very clear lead. And so everybody starts buying those blue slips. And then all of a sudden something happens and red's ahead. Oh, well, now everybody's buying those red slips. You buy too many slips and you're losing your Egyptian pounds as opposed to gaining those Egyptian pounds that count towards winning the game. I guess I should say the Egyptian pounds are the money that is used in Camel Up. The whole idea of getting those slips and when to get those slips, and you don't want to wait too late. And the way that that is done, you have an action that you shake the pyramid, drop a die that will move the camels, or instead you could draw a slip so the camels stay in that same position. And usually when there's somebody that looks like they're in that lead, everybody's going to take turns buying those slips. And even if you're buying the last slip, it potentially could give you money, could potentially give you points. But then if all of a sudden that lead changes, well, we're jumping onto something else.
One thing that I think is great about this game is there are several different ways to earn money. I mean, you would think that most people are going to get the slips because that's a way to earn money, but you gain a coin every time you roll a die. You also can play spectator tiles on the track, which whenever a camel lands on there is also going to give you a coin. And then finally, for the final race, you can place a bet down on who you think is going to win the actual race. If you're wrong, you also get penalized on that. But if you're the first person to guess it correctly, you score high points, get a lot of money, and it just goes down. You look through those in order at the end of the game and pull out everybody who got it right in which order. You get money accordingly, and all the people that bet wrong are going to lose 1 coin for each incorrect guess. There's a lot going on in the game, a lot of craziness. Definitely, in my opinion, one of the funner race games.
And you also pick the overall loser of the game.
Correct.
Too.
Yeah, that's true. I forgot about that.
So you have that option. It's the same exact process. You have that opportunity to wager in both of those locations.
I think it's worth bringing up if we're talking about this game to talk about the component quality for this game, which includes the box and insert. Not only does the board have this nice pop-out 3D book feel to it, the components are really high quality. The coins are nice plastic pieces. There's that really fun pyramid in the middle of the table. And then, of course, the game insert itself has a place for all of those components, and they're all neatly labeled with a little diagram. Shows you exactly where things go. This is a game that's really fast to get out and really fast to put away because they've put a lot of thought and energy into that. And then just the components themselves are a ton of fun. In fact, I love playing this game with little kids because they might not be thinking through some of the strategic depth of the game, but just watching how excited they get to just pick that pyramid up and shake it around and watch the dice drop out. I mean, that alone is fun enough.
It's a great game to play with younger kids for sure. And it does not diminish that fun to play that game with older people as well.
Remind me.
Game will go up to 8 players, but if you have 6, 7, or 8 at the table, each player is given a special wager card that makes it so that they can actually team up, pass your card to the player that you think picked the right slip. For each leg, it's those betting slips. You can give them your card. Essentially, if they were right, you both get that reward.
Last time we played, I can't remember if it was 7 or 8 players, but we had those team up cards. I didn't do too well, or it didn't come around to my turn quick enough to get what I wanted, but I got really good at teaming up that I actually came out and won the game because I just got enough points from teaming up with people. I really liked that option with the higher player count.
One thing to remember with the partnership card, you're going to benefit from one of their rewards, from their best reward. They also will benefit from your best reward. Like you're talking about, Logan, they actually do provide a different level of strategy for this game because, especially in the higher player counts, which is I think why they included it, timing is everything in this game. They only get 1 or 2 actions in that leg of the race. Timing, when to use that card, and can be a big deal.
So that's Camel Up. It sounds like all of us have a fairly positive opinion of this game. I've enjoyed it every time it's hit our table, so it's been a good one.
Very much a fun game.
I picked a game from 2021 called Steampunk Rally Fusion, follow-up game to Steampunk Rally, which was in 2015. Designed by Oren Bishop and has some really fun art by Lena Cossette and David Forrest. One of the great things about Steampunk Rally Fusion is it is a game that is available for 2 to 8 players, so it has a really high player count, and adding the player count in this game doesn't really add a ton of time because a lot of what you are doing is simultaneous, which means you can get a lot of people into a fun game without it taking a ton of time. It says that it will run 45 to 60 minutes. I've only played it twice. Both times it has fallen pretty darn close to that time. I don't typically like to just read about the game, but with the 5 of us here and 5 games, it's going to take a little bit of extra time. So here we go. October 27, 1953, Earth. The Martian invasion has finally been defeated, but the cost in human lives and world destruction has been far too dear. The champions of the Steampunk Rally assemble with a daring plan. They will travel through time, gathering history's greatest minds to prevent the war from happening. They will compete in a new, more spectacular Steampunk Rally, adding captured Martian technology and the newly discovered fusion energy to their own brilliant inventions to demonstrate the intelligence, benevolence, and power of humanity to the Martians. By working together, they will avert the apocalypse, but only one can be crowned Ambassador of Earth. Steampunk Rally Fusion is a fantastically frenzied racing game where players construct powerful racing contraptions using unique and varied machine cards and a multitude of colored dice representing heat, steam, and electricity and fusion power. This one is an actual race. There is a finish line. One of the things that's nice, the track is going to be different every time you play. There's a starting tile, there's an ending tile, and then there's 3 tiles in between that are random. On top of that, you can play it on the Martian side of the board or the Earth side of the board. So you'll set up the 6 tiles because there's also a tile after the finish line. Each player will begin by selecting a different inventor throughout history. Each player will also get an engine card that represents their engine. Throughout the game, you're going to be drafting cards. Everybody will be dealt 4 cards each round, and you choose one, pass the others, just like a normal draft. As soon as you draft a card, you have to decide if you're going to add it to your machine or if you're going to use it for another benefit on the card, such as you can use it to gain dice or cogs. You have a few different options there. We often talk about games that can be cinematic, can kind of envision this great cinema that's going on. This is a game for me that I can do that because it's crazy. As you're going through this race, you're going through the hills, your machine is taking damage and you may lose parts. Parts of your machine may fall off and you're on the fly. You're adding new pieces. You're tweaking things. You're this crazy inventor and doing all these things to win this race. If you're not careful, you're going to go through these hills, take some damage, and your machine will blow up. In which case you're left with just your beginning engine piece and you move to last place and start again. If you have not played this game, the race aspect, quickly trying to on the fly determine, okay, what am I going to do with this piece? How am I going to salvage this? And at the same time, move ahead of everybody else. To me, it is a game that gets a little bit of that angst and a little bit of that cinematic feeling that really is just a good time.
So I've only played Steampunk Rally. I played that years ago at game night with Northern Utah Gamers Guild. How does this compare to the original Steampunk Rally?
I also have only played the original one, so I can't compare it to the new one. From what Dave's explaining, a lot of that sounds very similar.
Yeah.
Gives a lot of the same vibes that Steampunk Rally Fusion gives off. And I agree, David, the cinematography feel of it that you experience, at least I experienced with Steampunk Rally, was very much you keep all your heat up to keep your steam going, to avoid your machine breaking down and falling into the last place. I think the two sound very similar. I think if you enjoyed Steampunk Rally Fusion is going to be just another delight on your table.
What I liked about Steampunk Rally, and like Nathan said, it sounds like it's going to be very similar, is the fact that you have your board, you're racing around the track at the same time managing your machine and managing all your energy and with the cards that you're playing down to build it. I thought that was really fun. Like I said, I've only played it once, but I really enjoyed the time I played it. I forgot the name of it. Otherwise, I probably would have bought it, to be honest.
Like I said, I have not played Steampunk Rally. I think Fusion is a new thing that wasn't included in Rally. I know Dennis, my brother, played both. Steampunk Rally Fusion, I believe, is one of his top games. He loves this game. He brought it up to play with us at our Labor Day family reunion a few years ago. One of our cousins, Jake, loved it so much that he went out and bought it. I think it's the first game he's bought in years. He doesn't generally go out and buy a bunch of games. He enjoys playing with us, but this is one that he's like, I have to go buy that game. Just like you said, Nathan, if you enjoyed Steampunk Rally, definitely give this one a go. But even if you haven't, if you enjoy quirkiness, it's got that steampunk feel. You're the crazy inventor and you're building as you go. It's enjoyable. It's a good one. And that's Steampunk Rally Fusion.
For our last game, I'm going to talk about a very simple push your luck game all about mountain climbing. And this is High Risk. High Risk is a 2 to 4 player game designed by Trevor Benjamin and Brett Gilbert, published by Yellow Games, plays in 20 minutes or less. In this game, you are trying to climb Mount Everest, and you have 4 climbers that you're trying to get to the top, and you want to be the first player to reach the peak with all your climbers. On your turn, you're going to roll 6 dice. Those dice are going to have a variety of... So you're going to be rolling 6 six-sided dice, and on these dice, 3 sides are going to have a lightning bolt, 2 sides are going to have mountains, and 1 side is going to have clouds. Each time you roll, anything that is not a lightning bolt is locked. You're going to set that to the side, and then you have the option at that time to go ahead and roll any dice that have a lightning bolt on it. You'll pick up those dice, and you'll roll them again, and as long as the dice you rolled do not all have lightning bolts on them, then you can choose to roll again. But anytime you roll, and all the dice that you roll, whether that is 1 die or 6 dice, if aces show that lightning bolt, you bust. Otherwise, you choose to stop and you can advance 1 climber the number of mountains that you rolled. Everybody starts at base camp, proceed up the mountainside. Along the trail, there are 3 bivouacs. And these bivouacs allow for multiple people to gather there. All the climbers from all the colors can gather at these bivouacs. The first 2 locations that you can stop at are bivouacs. After the second one, there's a series of 3 cliffs that you're going to try to advance on. And each of these spots will only hold 1 climber. If I choose to stop at one of these cliff locations, and then someone after me rolls, and their climber comes to that same position, 2 people can't fit there, so my climber is going to fall back 1 spot. If there's a second climber at the next spot, then I go back 1 more spot. If all those spots are filled, I end up all the way back at the closest bivouac.
So it's just like climbing Mount Everest.
Just like, except for, you usually don't fall gently to the next bivouac, but
My bad.
usually you fall and die. But you get up halfway, you can reach the final bivouac. From there, you have 3 more cliffs. The 4th spot will be the peak. You're in a race to get all of your workers there, but each round, when you roll those dice, you're only going to be advancing 1 climber. 4 climbers to get up there. You have to manage on later turns. Do I just advance 1 climber all the way? Do I get several to the halfway mark? Do I advance several? Is this set of dice that I rolled, is that going to get 1 climber to the next bivouac that it's safe? I have to factor in all those options of which climber you're going to advance. When you roll, you have the opportunity to score a boost. And to score a boost is when you've rolled all 6 dice and none of those dice have a lightning bolt. Pressed your luck, or you got really lucky and none of those dice have a lightning bolt on it, get the chance to take a whole extra turn. Giving you the opportunity to advance the second climber reinforces that press your luck element that's in this game. Between me and my wife, the most I've ever seen anybody go is 6 turns in a row. I watched my wife advance all 4 of her climbers to the peak before I had made it past the second bivouac. I think the game is a blast. Very simple, very quick, easy to play, very small box, smaller than a tiny Epic game, easy to pack, easy to travel. It went to BGG with us, and you and Sabrina could take on a date and play at the table. She could see how mad you get when the D6 hate you.
That's why it will never go on a date. Let's end the date with a happy face instead of being mad at a dumb game.
I didn't know you had a happy face you could take on a date.
Yeah. My phone doesn't recognize it, but... So, Nathan, this is a game that you and I played, and let me just put it in one phrase. D6 hate me.
You know what? The first time we played, say you're full of baloney. Second time we played, D6 hate you. Absolutely. I felt bad. I think I had a stint where I did 5 turns in a row on you. Every time you tried to advance, because you were behind and you try to go roll 1-2 times, you'd bust. And then I'd go and I'd roll 3 times. I'd get a boost and go again, and then I'd stop, and then you'd go and bust. Very hard to witness such a painful realization that, yes, D6 hate you.
I had to physically check faces of the dice to make sure you didn't switch them. I thought maybe there were only lightning bolts on 4 of those dice. We'd get 2 faces that were either mountains or clouds, and then inevitably all lightning bolts almost every time.
It was both humorous and painful to watch. But that is High Risk by Yellow Games. Very much a game that I enjoy. It's a little bit harder to find these days, but still available. Well worth your pickup.
The nice thing is it plays quick. That I did like about it. A very fast game.
So even if it's painful, it's over fast.
It's just like ripping off that Band-Aid.
Yep, then you can start anew, and hopefully it goes better for you the next time.
Unless you're Andy and you say, forget this, put that game away.
Sounds like it's a good one to pick up. Also, if you're just trying to convince other people at the table that D6 do indeed actually hate you.
It's true.
I got proof right here, Andy.
That is our selection of 5 racing games.
Until next time.
We'll see you zooming past that finish line to the next racing game on your list.
As always, we want to thank you for listening. Check out our website. We have all sorts of cool things there. Love those blogs. Get a deeper look into the writing side of Meeple Nation.
Join our Facebook group, Meeple Nation Off Air. I look forward to seeing you there.
Follow us on Twitter @MeepleNation. We also have Instagram.
Under the same name. We also want to thank our sponsor, GameToppersLLC.com.
We love their product, and they have so much goodness out there.
And we also want to thank Braden Detergent for our music.
I almost pulled an Andy there. Okay.
Yes!
D6 hate me!
I'd like to talk about High Risk.
No, I'm talking about High Risk. You talk Camel Up.
I thought you were ready. That's why I said that.
And is it a bivouac or bivouac?
Either way, it's really fun to say.
That's one of the great reasons to get this game and
It's
play
just
it.
to answer the question.
I don't know,
Yeah, bummer.
but bivouac is awesome.
I've heard it bivouac.
Bivouac.
That's how I've heard it.
So you've heard
Me
it
too.
both ways.
Bivouac.
I have actually only heard it the one way.
Which way is the bivouac?
Bivouac,
That
that's
one.
how I've heard it too.
Okay. All right, we're going to go with bivouac from now on. This is all making it to the end.
Yeah.
Well, like we said, bivouac.
Fun. So these 3 bivouacs that you can stop at. What? Why is that funny?
Say it again. Say it again.
Ooh,
Nice.
bivouac.
Bivouac.
And Dave, while you're doing that, let me lay down a fat beat.
It is Bivouac.
Oh, good. I feel slow. That.
Sorry,
Bivouac.
Just to give
It's
you
pronounced Bivouac.
So, you. Bivouac.
There we go. We're
Does that get you back on track?
Yeah.
You were talking about the
Bivouac on track.
You think you were talking about the bonuses?
So there's high anxiety. This is not a Mel Brooks film.
Wow.
But that's a high anxiety. Dang it.
bivouac.
Bivouac.